Hello class, I hope that you're doing well today and I hope everybody had a good weekend, engaged in some self-care, and welcome to week 4. And so I want to focus on a couple of things. I'm not really going to talk about the readings or the objectives for this week. What I really want to focus on are two quick things, one super quick and then the other a little bit longer. And the first is, as you know, we do not have a paper for the historical presentation. I have laid out some things and I have shared a PowerPoint sample. What I think most important is, one, that you have a timeline. I think a timeline is important in terms of guiding the reader. And the other piece is to remember that this is not supposed to be a static PowerPoint, that is supposed to be audio-visual. So audio-visual would include a voiceover, slides. I'm not going to read any notes. I'm only going to read the slides, so notes could be transformed into audio. You might think about, do you have a short clip? Especially historical clips, those add a different flavor. And if not historical clips, then artifacts. And I really want to encourage you to reach out to our librarian, Kathy Butler. And you can go on the website under resources and you can even schedule an appointment with Kathy, or you can look up her email and send her an email. But I'm just trying to let you know that she is a phenomenal resource. Librarians have this magical power to find things that us regular mortals cannot find. And that's really important. It's important for the historical presentation because of things like video and artifacts, but it's even more important for the literature review. And so I want to transition into the second thing, the literature review. I need to be like I don't want to use the word clear, but I want to say I need to express how important this is. That just because you find an article on your topic does not necessarily mean that it's the right article. Okay? First of all, the articles need to be peer-reviewed. They need to be research articles, and Kathy can help you with that. But the other thing is that you need to have articles that are exploring the same themes closely. Now, they don't have to be from the same time period. The themes don't have to be measured in the same way. Nonetheless, that's important, because if you're too wide, right, then it's hard to compare and contrast studies. But if you're tight, then it makes the project easier. And what I'm trying to communicate to you is that Kathy, can just be so helpful in this. And the Writing Resource Center can be helpful around this. And I'll talk a little bit about that just a little bit more. And so with regard to the literature review, you have a sample, and I'm going to be speaking from that sample. One of the things that I think is important in your intro is that you make a clear statement about what you're trying to accomplish. What is the goal of your literature review? And in that, it says this current literature review examines the perceived reasons children enter the foster care system. So the emphasis is around the reasons that they're entering a specific foster care system. And then in the next, and I'm on page number 3, you see a list of reasons or factors: individual, environmental, agency. Perfect. And then it talks about some limitations. I like the length of the introduction on this paper. It's about a page. If you go any more than a page, that's a bit much. And so as you go into page number 4, individual factors, there are a couple of things that I want you to point out. First of all, you see subheadings. They are using subheadings for the variables that they are pointing out. That is important. That is so important. The second piece is that if you look at page 4, just page 4, there are 7 different studies cited on page 4, the first page of the literature review. So that gives you an idea that, 7 studies is about the minimum of what you're going to do in terms of finding articles for your literature review. All right. And so you see a couple of different ways that this is presented. Some are prevalent studies. Some look at race, whether it's African American or Hispanic. And then there's some other individual factors that are mentioned. in terms of income, race, and risk assessment. There are two things that I don't think are as overt in this literature review. One, I need for you to be clear about your studies when you are comparing and contrasting them. The way that you do that is via in-text citation. So if you're saying, this study found significant differences, in-text citation. Compared to this study that was inconclusive, in-text citation. That tells me which studies are different, and that's very important. The second piece, when you are mentioning studies, it is also important to consider differences because of the sample, how the sample was collected, who was in the sample. The findings for a high SES group might be different from a low SES group. And so you want to have a sentence about the sample was collected from blank, and it included mostly blank, and the number of participants were blank, okay? You might also include a sentence when you're referring to a qualitative versus quantitative study. All right, and the last thing that I think is very important is that if you do mention, and this isn't the last thing, if you do mention a qualitative or quantitative study, for example, in this paper, it mentions focus groups. So I know that that's a qualitative study because it mentioned focus groups. But you can also, if you like, talk about quantitative studies and the type of design. It might be a longitudinal design. It might be a quasi-experimental design. And usually you'll find this information in the second or third sentence in the methods section. Lastly, what I think is important is as you go through like individual factors or environmental factors, and these are examples, it would be good to have a concluding paragraph at the end of each section that really sums up what you're trying to say or what you found out about the individual level factors or what you found out about whatever variables that you're looking at. And that really, that's the difference, ladies and gentlemen, between, spitting out a bunch of information, but spitting out a bunch of information and then making a point about conclusively what that information said. Because then it helps you when you move to the conclusion to be more concise in your work. As I'm looking through this again, that last point that I made talks about lending your voice. Lend your voice to this literature review. Just don't let it be regurgitated information. Lend your voice to it. You're going to have different studies. Some are going to be prevalent studies. Some might compare an intervention. Some might be qualitative and be exploratory. Feel free to share, if you're comfortable, what types of studies that you're using. I mean, you can be, it could be, this study by Detlef was a qualitative study that included focus groups, or this study by Detlef was a quantitative study that included a longitudinal design. It doesn't have to be complex. You can wrap it up in a sentence. In-text citations are very important. I would say, and I'm looking at this, I would say that the negative part of this intro is there are no cites. And when I think about an intro, I think about almost every other sentence being cited. And that's really important as well. I'm not gonna say much about the conclusion because the discussion, because I think that you should take those concluding paragraphs and really make a tight discussion, but what really are you trying to say? Racial disproportionality, I'm on page 10 within the child welfare system, is an issue that is continuously fluctuating every year. I don't know about that. On the contrary, some races may portray as underrepresented in the child welfare systems. Okay, each issue presents a concern. Okay, this is okay for a discussion, but I really want you to be able to sum up, if we were looking at this paper, what do we know about these factors and which factors look like they're the most important? I like the length of the conclusion and the recommendation, so I would stick with that. And please make sure this literature review includes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 different studies. With that said, I really recommend that you catch up with Kathleen Butler. And the other thing is that I recommend that you use the Writing Resource Center. Now, according to some of your classmates, and they inform me they will only look at 7 pages. That's okay, because if you give them the abstract, the intro, and maybe one of the factors that you're looking at, that's going to be 7 pages. And so if I gave them my piece with individual factors and I let them, do their magic on that, then it's going to help me with the agency or the environmental factors section as well. I can format it the same way. You do need to have your paper, those 7 pages written before you contact them and you make an appointment. You can make an appointment via in-person, Zoom, or get written feedback. I urge you, please try and utilize this resource. It's going to be important. All right, so I hope that was helpful. Please reach out with any questions on the literature review. And most of all, I hope your week is off to a great start, and I hope you have a great rest of your week.